Public Broadcasting.
Tonight, a Frontline special series of portraits of the people of the Soviet Union. This is Tamara Russo. She works in a hospital. A few weeks ago, she got drunk and stole a knapsack from a bus station. Now she's facing trial for her crime. An extraordinary look inside the Soviet justice system. Tonight, the trial of Tamara Russo.
From the network of public television stations, a presentation of KCTS Seattle, WNET New York, WPBT Miami, WTBS Detroit, and WGBH Boston. This is a special Frontline series with Judy Woodruff.
Good evening. Tonight we continue our special 12-part series on life in the Soviet Union. The series is called Comrades. It was made by a team of producers from the British Broadcasting Corporation who spent nearly 2 years traveling throughout the Soviet Union. They were allowed access rarely granted a Western film crew. Frontline is bringing this series to the United States because it offers unusual insights into what life is like for some of the people who live and work in the Soviet Union. People about whom we know so little. People who live in a closed society. And when we do hear about their society, it's usually in news reports that deal mainly with exceptional events. Comrades deals with the ordinary. It's a series of portraits of Soviet citizens. Tonight, the story of a woman judge and the defendant who stands before her. The program is called The Trial of Tamara Russo. And at the end, I'll be back to talk to the series producer, Richard Denton, about how it was made, and with experts to find out more about the Soviet criminal justice system. This film is narrated by Richard Denton.
Good evening, comrades. The town is greeting the 1st of May. Bieltsi is dressed in a green uniform, but the main color today is red. On the lawns, tulips are blooming. Spring has come to Bieltsi.
It's Saturday, the 27th of April, the weekend before the great national holiday of May the 1st. We're in Western Moldavia, which used to be called Bessarabia. It was Romanian until 1940, and though Romania was allied with Hitler in World War II, Moldavia appears thoroughly Soviet in this spring of 1985. It's a doubly significant occasion, for May Day is followed almost immediately this year by the celebrations for the 40th anniversary of the defeat of Nazi Germany. Bieltsi is in festive mood. Inside the Palace of Culture, choirs and bands rehearse national and patriotic songs, while outside, the car parks are bedecked with brides and grooms who emerge at 10-minute intervals, happy to be made man and wife at this auspicious time.
As the marriage mills grind out their quota of newlyweds, the reality of married life in the Soviet Union seems far away. The reality is that 1 in 3 marriages ends in divorce. It starts here, for when the last toast is drunk, the young couple may well have to move in with the parents, a notoriously explosive arrangement made worse by the arrival of children. So they row. He takes to drinking, the rowing gets worse. It ends here, at the People's Court, where the couple need to prove to a judge their inability to live together.
My husband started to drink in 1980. In 1984, he began to drink heavily. In the end, I turned him out of the apartment and he left.
The Soviet Union's drinking problem is no secret. It's responsible for huge losses to the economy through absenteeism and poor work. It's linked with suicide and the 3rd most common cause of death.
A visitor to a Soviet court couldn't fail to notice how often alcohol is at the root of robberies, hooliganism, and all the social problems surrounding divorce. This man, a violent alcoholic, was divorced in 1982. He was ordered to pay 1/3 of his salary as maintenance for his 2 children. He's defaulted on his payments, and now his wife is trying again through the court to compel him to pay up. As he is now in custody, it's hard to see how she will succeed.
New anti-alcohol laws have earned Mikhail Gorbachev the nickname Lemonade Joe. The world waits to see how Russians weather their winters without recourse to vodka.
Meanwhile, the day-to-day business of the Bieltsi People's Court continues. On the panel of 7 judges is Lyubov Bubulic. She works a 5-day week, 3 days in court and 2 days in the office, advising members of the public and preparing for her court appearances.
She's a law graduate, and in 1974 was proposed for the office of judge for her electoral district by the Bieltsi Locomotive Factory Collective. As hers was the only name on the ballot, she was elected unanimously and has been returned in every election ever since. Rape, murder, crimes against the state and other heinous breaches of the law are tried in the Supreme Court. Lyubov is involved mostly with civil disputes and petty criminal cases, a caseload at the very heart of the Soviet social scene. Every Tuesday, a sad little group waits outside Lyubov's office, for then she acts as a kind of citizens' advice bureau, guiding her electors through the complexities of the Soviet Penal Code.
My husband, where's he now?
He's in prison.
What'll happen to him?
I can tell you only what the law says. But that's all up to the court.
This woman is inquiring about the likely fate of her husband, who's in prison awaiting trial for perjury.
According to the law, he could get anything from 1 to 7 years in jail.
In Soviet trials, there are no juries, but with her on the bench are 2 lay assessors. They may, in theory, outvote her. In fact, they rarely, if ever, do. Today, Lyubov will hear a case for which the maximum penalty is 5 years in prison. On the right are the defendant and her lawyer. On the left, witnesses. In trials of this kind, the prosecuting counsel doesn't appear. Much of that role will be performed by the judge.
I declare the People's Court in Bieltsi open. The matter before the court is a criminal case in which Tamara Alexandrovna Russo is accused under Article 145, Part I of the Moldavian Criminal Code. Secretary, please state who's in court.
Present are the defendant Tamara Alexandrovna Russo, who was charged on April 22nd, 1985. Defending her is the lawyer Yefim Isayevich Topolar. Also in court is the plaintiff Podoriets and the witness Chebatar.
Georgy Ivanovich Chebatar. Please leave the courtroom and wait in the corridor.
As in Britain, witnesses must leave the courtroom during the trial.
Do not leave the building until we summon you back.
Very few plead not guilty in a Soviet court. They wouldn't be here if there was much doubt as to the outcome. For evidence collected by the state procurators at pre-trial interrogations virtually ensures a guilty verdict. Independent of the police, the procuracy is the least visible but most powerful arm of the system, and it's mainly staffed by members of the Communist Party.
I'm a member of the Communist Party. I realized that if they trusted me to do such responsible work, I had matured enough to become a party member. That responsibility consists in being an absolute example in everything, everywhere. It's not a burden. It's a personal commitment to be at the top, to be an example to everyone. Russo, stand up, please. What is your full name?
Russo Tamara Alexandrovna.
Your date of birth?
3rd of August, 1934.
Where were you born?
Narofaminsky district in the Moscow region.
Нарofaminsky район Московской области.
The Krishkino State Farm.
Is Narofaminsky a town?
Yes.
Your nationality?
Russian.
Do you belong to the Communist Party?
No.
You're not a party member. When did you leave school?
When I was 15.
Have you done military service?
No.
Your family status?
My husband is dead. I have 2 sons.
How old are they?
23 and 24.
They're adults.
Yes.
Where do you live?
21 Sovietska Street, apartment 9.
What do you do?
I'm a custodian in the gastrology department, but at that time I was a ward maid in Polyclinic 1.
And you're
A custodian in the gastrology department.
the gastrology department of the Republic Hospital.
Yes.
Have you any previous convictions?
No.
Your rights are as follows. You may familiarize yourself with the evidence. You may introduce new evidence. You may summon extra witnesses. You may question witnesses. You may answer the accusations. You may appeal against the constitution of the court. You will have the last word. You may appeal against the sentence. These are your rights. The charge in the case against Tamara Russo comes under Article 145.
Tamara Russo is charged with theft. It's alleged that while drunk, she stole a bag from the plaintiff at Byeltsy railway station. When she came to her senses, she returned the bag to the waiting room. But missing were a pair of spectacles and some sandals. These were later found at her apartment.
Thus, with malice aforethought, she stole personal property worth $48.50 belonging to citizen Podryets.
Tamara Russo is one of that army of aging Russian women who look older than they are, condemned to thankless, low-paid jobs, sweeping and scrubbing and sitting on duty in public places. In the Soviet Union, a woman's pay, on average, is about 65% of a man's. But Tamara Russo falls short even of that. She earns $35 a week, barely half the national wage. However, to put things in perspective, rents in the Soviet Union are exceptionally low, and so are charges for heating and hot water. Basic foods are also cheap. It's the luxuries people yearn for. Good clothes, fresh fruit, tea from India, coffee from Brazil, English chocolates. And perhaps Tamara Russo was tempted when she saw lying on the bench the unattended bag that contained Podorets' belongings.
In the stolen bag were One man's shirt worth $13, one toothbrush 45 cents, a toothbrush holder 60 cents, toothpaste 75 cents, a safety razor $3, a metal cup 70 cents, a shaving brush $6, razor blades, trademark Vostok $2, spectacles $4, one pair of underpants $3.50, a t-shirt $3.50, sandals $11, all belonging to citizen Podryets. In all, she stole goods worth $48.50. Thus, with malice aforethought, Tamara Russo committed a crime under Moldavian law. Russo, stand up, please. Have you heard the charge?
Yes.
Is the charge clear?
Yes.
Do you plead guilty?
I do.
In full?
Yes.
How do you respond to the aforesaid accusation?
I don't know what that means.
You don't know what?
Aforesaid accusation. What's that?
Didn't you hear? The court asked you if you understood the charge. You replied that you did so. Please explain how you committed this crime.
On February 7th, I was returning from work. I met a friend. She'd had a few. She had a bottle of wine on her. She said, "Let's have a drink at your place." I don't know how it all happened.
Tamara Russo tells the court that she'd gone to Bieltsi station in a drunken state to buy some tablets. She'd gone to the waiting room and struck up a conversation with the plaintiff Podryets. Eventually, Podryets went out onto the platform for a smoke. Russo admits picking up his bag and taking it home. But she says she had no intention of stealing anything, for when she came to her senses, she noticed the bag. She asks the court to believe that when she realized whose it was, she returned it. Only unfortunately, the sandals and spectacles had fallen unnoticed onto the floor of her apartment. She left the bag on a bench at the station, for by this time, Podryets was reporting the theft to the police. The police arrested Russo. At first, she denied any knowledge of the bag, but later she showed them where it was. However, the glasses and sandals were missing, and these the police found at her apartment.
I admit I am guilty. It's the first time in my life I've ever done such a thing. At work, I have to look after the patients' fur coats, fur hats, and money. I've had the best character references. I don't know how it happened.
Lyubov Bubulic does not live in an apartment block on the edge of town, but in a neat bungalow near the center, and enlarged somewhat since her parents' day. Lyubov's husband teaches in an evening class, and they have one son who's studying at Leningrad University. Lyubov earns $335 a month, well over the national average and nearly 3 times more than the widow Russo.
Lyubov's high income enables her to be a regular customer here, at the Kolkhoz market for privately grown produce. Every Russian housewife knows that prices here are 3 or 4 times more expensive than those in the state shops. But at least there is a wider choice, and the food is fresh and of high quality. Under the Soviet system, these peasant workers on collective farms are entitled to cultivate their own private plots. Their small market gardens are highly productive, and this surplus plays a major part in feeding the towns.
No, no.
Lyubov's life is in happy contrast to many of those she meets in court. She has a dutiful and loving husband who does not drink. She has a spacious house and plenty of money. There's a car in their garage, she's trusted to travel abroad, and she's a judge, a pillar of society in this small provincial town. Lyubov Bubulic has done very well under the Soviet system that seems to suit her temperament to perfection.
Вы знаете, я еще с детства.
From my childhood, I loved to teach. I remember, as a little girl, playing with dolls, not as other children, nursing them. I lined them up and lectured them. You go there, don't do that, do it like this. I remember, in this very house, my mother watching me in amazement. It would have been better if you'd confessed.
Much, much better.
Tell us, did you bring back those things because you realized you'd committed a crime? Or because they didn't suit you?
No, if they just hadn't suited me, I'd have thrown them out, not returned them. But I realized that he really needed them, so I took them back to the station.
Do you often drink hard liquor?
No, I work in a hospital.
How much did you drink that day?
A large bottle of fortified wine.
Between two?
Between two. I never drink with such responsible work.
It's now the turn of Tamara Russo's lawyer. There's no hope of an acquittal, but if he can arouse the court's pity, he might at least save his client from prison.
Has this ever happened to you before?
Never, never. In all these years I've worked in medicine.
What do you do?
Now I work as a custodian, but then I was a ward maid.
How do you explain the events of February 7?
I had a drink and I committed the crime. I don't know why it happened. I'm ashamed for my children. They don't even know that their mama is on trial today. I've gone gray in these last months.
How did you come to steal personal belongings from a fellow citizen? Have you thought about this?
No. It's a crime. I don't know how it happened. I admit my guilt totally.
But how was it you left the sandals and glasses at home?
When I took them out of the bag, I forgot all about them.
What did you do with those sandals?
I didn't want them at all.
When did you decide to take the things back to the station?
After half an hour or an hour, maybe. I don't know.
Did you know the time of Poduret's train?
No.
You didn't. Why didn't you give the things back to him? Why leave them on the bench?
If I'd been sober, of course, I'd have given them back to him. I didn't need them at all.
So you put everything down to the fact that you were intoxicated.
Yes.
So how do you evaluate your actions that day?
I'm completely guilty. I did an awful thing.
Tell us, please, do you live alone?
Yes, my husband died 7 years ago.
7 years since you lost your husband.
Yes.
And your health?
I have high blood pressure.
You have high blood pressure. Someone with your condition shouldn't drink.
But that's what I did, and look at the results.
Tell us, please, did you apologize to the plaintiff?
I did. When the police were questioning me, I said, "Forgive me, please. I'm sorry."
What do you ask of this court?
I beg you not to punish me severely. I have 2 sons. In my life, I will warn others. Never will anything like this ever happen again. I beg you, forgive me for the sake of my sons who don't even know what I've done.
Plaintiff Timofey Dmitrovich Podorets, go to the clerk and sign that you'll tell the truth.
I always tell the truth.
We're warning you that giving false evidence is punishable by law. Sign, please. That the court has warned you of your duty not to tell lies.
The plaintiff, Timofey Podorets, is a veteran of World War II. He works in Bieltsy's sugar factory.
Come back here, please. Do you know the defendant?
No, I first saw her at the station.
Tell the court what happened.
Well, you see, that evening I was given a package vacation. I didn't know at the time I was going to a resort. But I was called into the local union office, and they told me that as an old veteran of the Great Patriotic War, that awarded me a package vacation.
As the trial progresses, Bieltsy prepares for next week's festivities. Although no one knows it at the time, all this will have an important bearing on the fate of Tamara Russo.
Tamara Russo has pleaded guilty, but still the catalogue of damning evidence is embellished, as if the purpose of this trial is the ritual humiliation of this old woman.
Chibetar Georgi Ivanovich.
But in Soviet society, the confession of the accused is not enough. The bench must also be convinced by the evidence. Reaction perhaps to Stalinist days, when confessions were extorted from defendants.
Where do you work and as what?
In the state grocer's shop.
In Floresti?
Yes.
As what?
A loader.
A loader.
We were going on vacation. I saw this person come in. That one.
The plaintiff Podorets?
Yes. He put a bag down on the bench. I thought she was his wife. I was only sitting about 5 yards away. He went out. She took the bag and left. He comes back and says, "Where's my bag?" "That woman took it. I thought she was your wife," I said. "And what was in the bag, I don't know."
The second witness, Yelena Milinchan, saw Tamara Russo replace the bag on the station bench. Yelena is a countrywoman and speaks Russian very poorly. She chooses to give her evidence in Moldavian through the court interpreter. Although Lyubov and her 2 assessors are Moldavian, according to law, every question has to be posed in Russian, translated into Moldavian, answered in Moldavian, and translated by the interpreter back into Russian.
Где вы живете?
Where do you live?
Село Лунга, Ансату Лунга, район Фореш.
Village of Runga in Foreshki region.
Moldavia is one of the newer Soviet republics, lost to Romania after a Soviet ultimatum issued in June 1940. It's a rich, fertile land which produces an abundance of food and wine. In the countryside, the lifestyle of the people still owes as much to Romania as it does to the Soviet Union. Lyubov Bubulic is Moldavian born and bred. She's visiting friends in the country. A happy occasion, a 5th wedding anniversary celebration.
We've been expecting you.
Yes, it's become quite a habit.
Welcome to the party.
How are you? Well?
Fine. Come on in.
Don't be bothered by the cameras.
The talk and toasts run to romance and marriage and children. The presence of the camera is no inhibition.
Aha, let's drink to the children.
It's children that matter most in the world.
Yes, there's nothing to beat them.
But children must have ambition.
Attention. Today is an important day. It's 5 years since... How shall I put it? 2 hearts beat as one, living side by side in sadness and joy. This is a day to celebrate. Let there be peace on earth and joy. Let's all rejoice and be happy.
Please, and let's meet every year.
Let's meet at least twice a year. Do help yourselves.
Good health, happiness, and a son.
Cheers. Peace and prosperity.
It's her first offense. She's got a good character reference. She's considered a good worker who's diligent and conscientious. There are no complaints about her at work. I ask you to consider the character of my defendant. Do not imprison her, but let her work on at the hospital and undergo correction there. I submit, comrades, that this would be correct, fair, and in accord with those goals which characterize our socialist justice.
I'll never do such a thing again. I beg you not to punish me too harshly. I will make honest amends in my work.
Is that all? The court will retire to consider its verdict.
Please rise.
There will be a 2-hour wait. Yefim Topolar, a disabled World War II veteran, fills the time by writing his May Day greeting cards. Tamara Russo will have to pay Topolar $40 for her defense. Remarkably, defense lawyers are not state employees. Their self-governing volunteer organization, though ultimately state-controlled, is allowed far more autonomy than other legal groups enjoy.
Please rise.
Although the court has to take into account the fact that Russo was drunk when she committed the crime, which adds to her guilt, we must also consider that this is her first conviction, that she has sincerely repented. and that she has a good work record. The court will therefore not commit Russo to prison. But in accordance with Articles 271 and 272 of the Moldavian Penal Code, the court finds Russo guilty and sentences her to 1 year's correction at her workplace and a 20% reduction in her wages. If you, the accused, or you, the victim, feel that the sentence is too mild or too harsh, you may appeal to the Supreme Court within 7 days. Accused, do you have any questions?
No.
Do you, plaintiff?
No.
The session is closed.
You must give a written undertaking that you know you've been sentenced to do correctional labor and that you report to the police if you change jobs or want to leave town. Sign here.
A reduction of 1/5 of her meager wages will leave Tamara Russo even worse off. Correctional behavior at work means that she'll have to attend meetings throughout the year at which she'll be expected to abase herself before her fellow workers. Outside the courtroom, she gives her reaction to the sentence.
They're taking 1/5 of my wages. That's it. What stupidity. I'm responsible for thousands of dollars worth of stuff at the hospital. What stupidity. Look at what 1 glass of wine will do.
It's very nice for us judges, when we've achieved our goal, to hear the accused say, "Thank you, I'll reform. I won't ever do that again." It's a kind of reward for what we've done. We've taught that person a lesson and achieved our goal of re-education. I like my work. I feel that I help people. Our Communist Party opens the parade and specially salutes on this May holiday the veterans of the Great Patriotic War. The veterans of heavy industry and all hero workers who are surrounded by respect and admiration in our town.
At last, the festivities. And to coincide with the 40th anniversary, an amnesty for certain categories of criminal. By its terms, Tamara Russo's sentence is wiped out. But what can never be wiped out is the pain and embarrassment of her day in the People's Court at Bielce.
Greetings to the workers of our town. On this day, we greet every group. We greet the teachers and the taught.
Long live peace in the world!
children!
Long live May Day, the International Day of Workers' Solidarity. Hurrah!
That was the trial of Tamara Russo. The producer of the series Comrades is Richard Denton. Richard is with me now. Why did you pick this particular judge?
Well, it was quite a complicated process, actually. I mean, the Central Ministry of Justice gave us permission for the idea in principle. The problem was
doing
a film about a judge. The problem was to find a republic that actually wanted to be viewed under that particular spotlight. So that we went to Georgia initially and found a judge, but then the local authorities steered clear of it. Went to Yerevan in Armenia and found another judge, and again the local authorities finally, despite the Ministry of Justice, said, no, we don't really fancy having anything to do with it. And so we ended up in Moldavia, and that's how we found.
And they didn't care if they were portrayed as having crime.
Well, they seemed more easygoing about it, yeah.
What about this particular trial? Why pick Tamara Russo as a subject?
That was very much an editing decision. I mean, in fact, we were free to film all criminal cases for the 10 days, fortnight that we were there, and all civil cases in which the people were happy to be filmed. They had the choice. But in the end, it seemed sensible in the cutting room to focus on a particular story.
Why did we never see her? We saw the judge at home. We never saw Tamara Russo at home. Was that their decision? Or?
No, that's the result of the same thing. It's actually a mistake. I mean, in the sense that we filmed so many cases, we didn't think of going to everybody's homes. When, in the end, we decided to follow one case, it is actually a pity that we don't have Tamara at home. But in fact, we didn't ask to do it.
Once you got to Moldavia, did you have access problems? We understand what happened at the bigger level, but once you got there, did you have problems getting into the courtroom, shooting any particular part of the trial?
The funny thing was that because the Ministry of Justice had said, fine, we could film anything we liked in the courtroom, walk out of the front door, and there was a problem, because then you were in the hands of the local authorities, and you wanted to film the street, and they were thinking, why does he want to film this street? Is there some reason, you know? And they became very suspicious. But no problems at all in the court. And interestingly enough, I don't know about the States, but certainly in England, we could never have made the film. You're simply not allowed to take even an ordinary camera into a courtroom, even a stills camera.
Also joining us are Dr. Louise Shelley, who has studied criminal law in the Soviet Union. She's an expert on the Soviet criminal justice. She now teaches at American University. And Dr. Eugene Husky. He has just written a book on the Soviet legal profession. He teaches at Bowdoin College in Maine. Dr. Husky, let me start with you. Is what we saw here a fair representation of the criminal justice system in the Soviet Union?
I think it's very typical of a petty case. We see the judge condescending to the defendant. We see the defendant beginning to be retrained in the courtroom. In the Soviet Union, the correction of the defendant doesn't begin in prison, it begins in the courtroom itself. You should retrain them right there. So I think in that sense, it is really quite typical. One of the differences, though, one of the things we should point out is that it is one slice of the criminal process. It's only the trial. What we don't see is the pretrial proceeding, which is very important because this is where the case is made.
What's involved there?
The person is put under detention, then they would bring in the witnesses and question the defendant fairly carefully, and they would go out to the scene. And so once that whole thing was completed, the whole case was made, the case went to trial, it would be pretty much impossible for the person to get off. 99% of them, in fact, would be convicted.
Dr. Shelley, what about in a major crime? I mean, what would be different if she had done something much worse, if she had used a weapon or whatever? I mean, what would the system, how would the system have responded then?
The trial would have been quite different. First of all, there would have been many more character witnesses brought in to testify to her. In this case, there were just documents brought in about her work performance. There would be people from her workplace, from her apartment building, who would come in and talk about what kind of person she was. She would not have gotten a community sentence. She would have been sentenced to probably several years imprisonment.
What do you think? Was the film a fair representation as far as you could see?
Definitely.
Dr. Husky, in what ways, for those of us who really only know the American system, in what ways is the Soviet system different from ours?
It's different in a lot of ways, but it's different in some ways because it's a socialist system, and in some ways because it's a civil code system. The judge playing a very active role in the process, and the case being made before the trial is a reflection of its being a continental-style system, like Britain or France. The fact that it has a very harsh system of justice, where the actual penalty seems very harsh, may be more a reflection of Soviet socialism.
But, I mean, for example, I mean, is everyone entitled to a lawyer? We noticed that she had legal representation.
About 70% of defendants in the Soviet Union will have lawyers, and everyone is entitled to them, even if they don't have sufficient funds to pay for them. One can get a lawyer. The difference is in the Soviet Union, the lawyers tend not to defend as vigorously as they would here. There are real limits to what the lawyer can do in the Soviet Union. Of course, once a person gets to trial, normally the defense counsel can only plead for mercy, can try to get his defendant off with a slightly lesser sentence.
What about juries? Do you ever see juries in the Soviet Union?
No, this is traditional, that you just have two people's assessors. There's another point that I think...
They were the two who were sitting on either side of the judge.
And they have, as was said in the film, almost no input on the decision. It's usually the judge that makes the decision, and the people's assessors just go along with the judge's decision.
They're usually only there for about 12 days per year, so they don't get as much experience as the professional judge.
And there's no plea bargaining in the Soviet system. All the cases go to trial. In this country, 98% of the cases are decided outside the courtroom. There's bargaining between the prosecutor and the defense attorney. In the Soviet Union, all cases go to trial, and a case like this in the United States would be probably diverted out of the system. It wouldn't even reach the courtroom proceedings. In the Soviet Union, even petty cases go to trial. And about 1 in 10 cases is handled outside the Soviet courtroom, where the case is taken to the individual's workplace, and they're put on trial in front of their coworkers. Mm-hmm. And so this process of humiliation would be much more public.
How much power does the judge have? I mean, you were just making the point, Dr. Husky, that the system works ahead of time, so that she's almost convicted before she gets there.
The judge has a good deal of power in the courtroom. It depends on the relationship between the state prosecutor and the judge. Some judges can be more overbearing, others can be more deferential to the state prosecutor. The thing to remember is that the judge is always subordinate to the Communist Party organization in that town or in that region. And if a case comes along, whether it's a dissident case or it's a case of a relative of the first secretary of the local party organization, and the party gives a signal to the judge that the case should be decided in a particular way, the judge will follow. So judges are not as independent, of course, as they are in the West.
Well, when we heard that Judge Bubulic had been elected, that meant elected by a group of party
That meant
officials.
that the local party organization had her name on a list. They selected her, and then they managed a collective meeting of a factory to put her name in nomination, because there's only a single name on the ballot.
Yeah. In our country, it's you're innocent until you're proven guilty. How is it different in the Soviet Union?
In the Soviet Union, they don't have this concept of innocence until one's proven guilty. The whole weight of the criminal proceedings is such that an individual, unless they consider that person guilty, will not stand trial. And as you notice, there's a period of about 2.5 months between the time that she's arrested and the time that she goes to trial. And she's been out in the community in this period because she hasn't been held in confinement. In most serious cases, an individual will be held in confinement until trial. There's not much bail in the Soviet Union, or the equivalent of it. And there will be an intensive investigation in which the whole criminal proceedings, the whole case will be thoroughly investigated. And the people who are conducting the investigation will be under pressure to produce a case, because they may get in trouble if they don't prosecute, if they let go somebody who's been detained.
Why did they make such a big deal out of such a minor crime? I mean, she took this bag, she kept, a pair of spectacles and one other item, and she returned everything else. I mean, it was so minor, and yet they spent the whole day and they truly humiliated this woman.
Lenin said that in order to have deterrence in the criminal justice system, we must base it on the certainty of conviction and not on the severity of the punishment. And so the Soviet system is absolutely intent on ensuring that everyone who commits a crime is actually brought to justice and has their day in court.
The Soviet approach is totally different from ours. We emphasize a certainty. We would prefer not to impose so much severity. And the Soviets put another emphasis.
Mm-hmm. the alcoholism aspect. She said she had not drunk much wine before, whatever, but how big a part does that play?
In over 50% of the cases in the Soviet Union, alcohol figures in the commission of the crime. That includes all categories: theft, embezzlement, crimes against the person, hooliganism, which is the major category of crime commission in the Soviet Union. And in crimes against the person, it is even higher. 75% in certain Slavic regions of the Soviet Union, 85 to 90% of the crimes are committed while the individual is intoxicated. Mm-hmm. And it's very fortunate for Tamara Russo that she was tried in April and not in May, because in May, Gorbachev's anti-alcohol campaign came into force. And if she'd been put on trial then, she would have received a much harsher sentence.
This was May, of course, of 1985. Why is this woman, Tamara Russo, in such a pathetic situation economically? Here she is, she's older, she's a widow, she makes very little money, certainly compared to what the judge is making. I mean, we hear that the Soviet system is so egalitarian, but clearly we've seen a huge discrepancy here between the way these two women live.
Maybe our own misperception of Soviet society. Soviet society is like our society in that there are differences between the rich and the poor. The difference there is that there is a fairly substantial safety net. People who make very little money actually can get by. Rent is very cheap, as was pointed out in the film, and you don't have millionaires. I mean, it isn't possible to make an awful lot of money in the Soviet Union. So I think part of it, legally, exactly, there are a lot of illegal millionaires in the Soviet Union.
Is that right?
Working on the black market.
It's a subject for another program.
But I think there are class differences there, just as there are here.
What hope is there for this woman, for Tamara Russo? Can she, at this stage of her life, hope to improve her lot?
I don't think so. She is going to be poor the rest of her life. There is in the Soviet Union, as here, a feminization of poverty, and that many of the individuals who are poor in the Soviet Union are older women who are on pension, who don't have husbands, because men do earn higher salaries on average than women. And her income is low, and she doesn't have education. There's no prospect for her having better employment.
But there is this myth, I guess you'd have to call it, that's perpetrated about the Soviet Union, that everyone lives the same, that they're all seen equally under the state, and so forth and so on.
Yes.
That's the kind of society they would like to reach, but it's not the one they have right now.
Last question about crime. I think many of us have the impression there isn't a lot of crime in the Soviet Union, that people just don't want to do that sort of thing for fear of what the retribution would be. Is there much less crime there than here in this country?
There aren't crime statistics. Crime statistics in the Soviet Union are an absolute secret and have been so for over 50 years. But there are partial statistics material that leaks out, and so one has some knowledge of crime, and there is somewhat less crime than here. If you look at crimes against the person, if you look at theft, but there's a lot of hidden crime. There is so much stealing from the state and embezzlement that it's hard to equate crime rates.
For which the punishment is greater than anything we would have seen here.
Yes.
Okay. Richard, you were gesturing.
Just that I think there is actually demonstrably less crime on the streets. I mean, if you live there, there's less crime on the streets. But I think this film shows it's a heavy price to pay in terms of human dignity.
Well, we thank you all for being with us. Richard Denton once again, Dr. Louise Shelley, and Dr. Eugene Husky. We thank you all very much. Next week on Comrades, a close-up look at daily life in a Muslim community in the Soviet Union.
In Uzbekistan, one of the Soviet Union's Asian republics, modern communism and ancient Islam meet. Abdulkafa Hakulov is a man who's devoted his life to restoring the ancient mosques, symbols of a religion which the authorities officially frown on.
The program is called Master of Samarkand. It is next on Comrades. I'm Judy Woodruff for Frontline. Good night.
transcript of this program, please write to Frontline, Box 322, Boston, Massachusetts, 02134. For videocassette information about this program, write to Films Incorporated, 1213 Wilmette Avenue, Wilmette, Illinois, 60091. Frontline is produced for the Documentary Consortium by WGBH Boston, which is solely responsible for its content. Major funding for this special Frontline series was provided by this station and other public television stations nationwide. Additional funding was provided by the Corporation for Public Broadcasting. A companion book entitled Comrades, Portraits of Soviet Life is published by Plume Books and is available in bookstores and libraries nationwide.
This is PBS, the Public Broadcasting Service.